around that time that all of these weird things were happening with the medical clinic, I started having, as I say, I was living with my son on Lighthouse Street, and suddenly we were having, my car was being vandalized again in the exact same way that it had been vandalized in Oregon. So I was already talking to people. It followed the pattern of what was happening when I was, prior to my filing lawsuits against the Willamette Week and the Archdiocese of Portland and Oregon. So the all of the excessive tire slashings and window bashings, all of that started up again right outside my house, outside of our house in this neighborhood. And no one else's car was being targeted. It was just mine. And that, we were being treated badly by both Mexican and white employees for this Columbia Valley Community Center, Health Center. And it was like I had done something really wrong by, I think, reporting someone. The other thing that I was doing is, but after my son was born and I was feeling better, I started trying to go through my legal stuff again to see if I could get FOIA from the FBI still. And I went to a women's domestic center, and that's when I was told that what had happened to me was break and entry and sexual abuse, and it was a felony. It wasn't just a misconduct problem. So I called Portland PD, and I asked to be connected to whoever was in charge of the sexual assault department. For whatever reason, they didn't connect me to Detective Gross, who was the detective that I had worked with previously. So they wanted me to talk to somebody who was, I guess, in charge of sexual assault in some way at that time, and it was a Portland PD. It was Sergeant Rich Austria. And Austria basically was not an honest person. He was not honest, and he colluded in a criminal way with the Portland FBI. When I mentioned the fact that I had found out that what had happened was a crime, he didn't want to have anything to do with it, and he said, well, I'll have to talk to the FBI about it. So what someone had told me is, they said, if someone commits a crime in the Portland jurisdiction, you don't report crimes committed by an FBI agent to the FBI. They said you report that to the police because they're the ones who give that to a prosecuting attorney, and that's how that works. So I went ahead and tried to report this to Sergeant Austria. And he said he was going to have to talk to the FBI. So why exactly does he have to talk to the FBI if he already knows that it's not their jurisdiction to do anything about that? I mean, the FBI doesn't bring in the prosecuting attorney to prosecute their people for them. So right from the start, I think he was looking for something like a bonus in pay from the FBI and Portland. I'm sure that his kids have probably been in a better position since he did what he did to me, because what he did was such an enormous favor for the FBI, and it was so illegal. I'm positive that if you looked at his bank account and you looked at what was happening with his children at the time, his children probably ended up benefiting in some way. Nicer clothes, different car, better car, different school, some kind of perks. As for Sergeant Austria himself, he got promoted to a better position, and he got higher pay right after he colluded to conceal crimes. So what he did, I mean, I'm telling you, I have such an enormous black book on federal government workers that have committed felonies. It's incredible. So if anyone wonders why I'm being tortured, is it any wonder? I mean, I literally I could testify against probably 50 different individuals who I have evidence and who the record pretty much shows, just on the public record, who committed felonies. I am not kidding, I'm not exaggerating, at least 50, and that's just people that I have seen, and that's not including all the people who have worked in the background and avoided being known. I mean, it really is incredible. So, the Sergeant Austria went to the FBI, and then he calls me back and said, the FBI says they're handling this. And I said no, they're handling misconduct and abuse of their professional position. But they're not handling felonies. And I was told that only the police can do that. So basically they tossed me back and forth between the FBI, and I was talking to Bob Jordan at one point, and Sergeant Austria. And then Sergeant Austria just got really nasty. And he started to say, he took my report, he made a show of taking a report. But what he did is he scrambled it up so badly that there was no possible way, no prosecuting attorney in the right mind was going to take that and prosecute it. So when he scrambled it and omitted facts and introduced other facts, and then presented that without my being able to contest it, and presented this to the prosecuting attorney, of course they were throwing it out. The prosecuting attorney wouldn't have anything to do with it. I mean, if I were the prosecuting attorney, I wouldn't have anything to do with it, the way it was written. And he read it back to me, his report, and I said, basically he did the exact same thing that Amy Rowe did. So, I mean, I know without any doubt Amy Rowe is FBI. She's either FBI or she's connected directly to the FBI, and so is her mother. Her mother works for Google, which is information technology. It's very high up, with gaining information. Google has different intelligence persons working for them who want to have their hands on, personal information of others. So it was almost like he was making fun of what Amy Rowe did. Amy Rowe wrote this scandalous and defamatory story about me, read it back to me to let me know how bad it was, and then refused to make any corrections or changes, and submitted it to the entire world. What Sergeant Austria did is he pretended to take my facts, and first, actually, he tried to avoid taking my report at all. So let it be known first that he told me that he wasn't going to take my report. When he couldn't dissuade me from making a report, he then took the report, and then he scrambled up all the facts, omitted a bunch of things, and then he read it back to me. And when he read it back to me, it was full of so many inaccuracies and errors, and facts were missing from it. It made it sound like they hadn't done anything. It made it sound like it made it sound like I was intoxicated, but really not that drunk. Just had a little bit of a buzz. He made it sound like he omitted the fact at how much they'd groped me, and repeatedly groped me. He omitted the fact that they broke into my house, and he omitted the fact that I was incapacitated. The fact that I was incapacitated was the whole thing, was what this was about, because he knew that if I was incapacitated, they had committed crimes. I mean, the facts showed that they could be charged with crimes. I mean, it would be for a jury to determine whether or not they felt that there was enough evidence for that, and who they believed. However, I had facts sufficient to have a prosecution of criminal charges against those individuals. So he I said to him, this report is not correct, and I want to write my own statement. I said, I don't want you to submit that, and I had a right I had a legal right to submit my own statement to the prosecuting attorney because he was writing a statement himself. It was the police statement. I had a right as the witness and the victim to write a victim's statement. And he didn't allow me to do that, which is really bizarre. Because that's not how the legal system is supposed to work, and it's not what's in the law. And when I specifically told him that I was wanting to submit a witness statement, he rushed his statement ahead of mine and made sure that it got dismissed before I could even say a word and put anything in writing for the prosecuting attorney. So he didn't want me to contradict what false report he had made. And one thing I said to him, he said, if anything, he said, if this is anything at all, he said, it's a very light misdemeanor. I said, no, it's not. It's actually a felony. And I said, if I'm incapacitated, which I was, then it's a felony. And I told him, I said, I said, it's not hard for you to, I said, how come you didn't include that fact? And he said, well, he basically was willing to include the fact that I was groped and touched, but he wasn't willing to include the fact that I was incapacitated. And I said, so how come you're willing to take my word for it that they touched me, but you're not willing to take my word for it that I was incapacitated? And then he said, well, I can't prove you're incapacitated. And I said, well, how can you prove I was groped? So again, why was he willing to write down that I was groped? And yet he was not willing to write down that I was incapacitated. And I said to him, I said, you do have evidence that I was incapacitated because I can give you that evidence. I told you which bar we went to, and they both had credit cards, and you can trace how many drinks were ordered on those credit cards and ask any of my friends or witnesses who know me how much it takes to incapacitate me, to put me way over the limit. And I told you how many drinks I had had. You can confirm that by their credit cards, and you can also confirm how this would have knocked me over, basically, with a number of character witnesses that I could bring forward. So he refused to do it. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. So basically the police refused to investigate crimes of felony crimes. And he did it for the FBI. So then I told him when he said he wasn't going to do it, I said, don't submit that statement. I said, I want to write my own statement, so don't submit it because I'm going to write my own and I'll give you my own statement first. I found out that within 2 days he had sent his statement. After I told him not to send it, he sent his statement, rushed it over to the prosecuting attorney. And I think the prosecuting attorney sent it to his Michael Strunk. Because then I got something back from him that said, we're not prosecuting anything.